Hello, St. Thomas Academy, and welcome to the Cadet Football Show. My name is Mike Maxwell. I'm your host, and to my left is our head football coach, Travis Walch. Coach, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It's good to be back.
It is. It's great to be back. So, congratulations on a nice win last Friday, a 28-7 victory over Waconia. Win number one of the Travis Walch era, and I call it era because that'll be a long time, right?
I hope so.
So give us your thoughts on the game.
Well, total team effort, and we prepped our kids all week. Number one, it's tough and it's easy at the same time to come off a loss the way that we lost. The tough part is in year one, trying to get them to still believe that everything that we've worked on matters and can still work. It's a major hurdle, and it was a concern. And I could feel, in the community too, this sense of, what's going on here? But on the other side of it, you have an edge walking in Monday, Tuesday, because you realize that we struggled in a lot of areas. So there was a lot of conversations over the weekends with player, coach, and how to get better. And as we talked about last week, the main theme was, how do we limit what we're asking our kids to do? And we limited a lot of things last week, and you kind of got to go in with coaches and say, listen, here are the non-negotiables. Our kids need to be able to align right to allow them to play fast. And I think we saw our defensive staff do a really good job of limiting things. The way that we attacked, the way that we triggered was much different in this game than it was the previous week. And with our offense, we just said, let's cut down on scheme. Let's understand that everything that we need to do right now has to start in the run game, and then that will open things up. And if there's one thing I remember clearly saying last week is we have to be patient. In this game against Waconia, they're going to make you earn it all the way down the field, and they're going to clearly take things away. They're not going to let you throw quick into the outside, and they're not going to let you throw over the top. And we were going to have to win a game in a small space and grind it out and feel great about 4-yard and 5-yard carries. And I think the way the game played out, especially in the first half, it was stay within the plan. We'll be able to see more formations, and what we would call the championship quarter is always the third. Like, what do you do into halftime, and what adjustments are made? Generally, is the big swing quarter, and then fourth quarter you got to hold on. So overall, just happy not only in the practice week, but also in the way that we executed and were patient in game.
I would agree. So let's talk a little bit about offensively. At least from my vantage point, looked like you struggled a bit. You were moving the ball, but just couldn't get into scoring position, and certainly not into the end zone. So first quarter, you were 0-0. You finally break through in the second quarter. Maximus throws a great pass. Actually, a couple of great passes on that drive to set up what became a 6-yard TD to Chase Young. And of course some hard running by Savion and the other backs. So with a rarely missed extra point by Declan Wilson, you took a 6-0 halftime lead.
Yeah, I just want to step in. I didn't feel like we struggled at all in the first half. I think we knew, I thought we executed really well going down the field. Yep. And the week before, we were probably best in the red zone in small spaces. And I felt like once we got down in higher red zone is probably where they tightened up a little bit, and where those 4-yard gains now become 2. And we were stopped, I think, on a 4th and 3, in which we elected and said, big identity of who we want to be is we've got to be able to run the ball when everyone knows we're running the ball. And I thought, it was one of those deals where I said, that is who the first half felt like what I thought that game was going to be. We were going to move the ball. The struggle that I would say is definitely in the red zone is we would have probably wanted to find another spot to hit and locate offensively. But on the defensive side of it, we played really well in the first half, and I was really happy with that.
Yeah. Bit of bending every now and again, but I think for the most part, they played tough.
I will say this over and over again: it's rare to have a defense that can shut you down in any manner. You have to make calls at some point to go, this is what we're willing to give you, and this is what we're not willing to give you. And what we will always say as defense is, how do they want to beat us? Well, last week they wanted to beat us throwing quick to the outside and running the football. And you can only elect to take away so many things sometimes, especially when it's even talent. And what we consistently said is, against this team, we are going to give them some deep, wide shots. And we think over the course of the game, the thing about throwing deep and wide is you have to protect it. You have to run great routes. You have to have a really good throw. And they were making some of those, okay? But we felt like over the course of the game, if that was going to be their identity and the way to beat us, sooner or later we were going to get home and get a big sack that stopped the drive. Right. Sooner or later they weren't going to be able to make that throw, or Buck was going to come up and knock one away. And throwing deep and wide against that last team, we said, we think they can do it, but can they do it for a whole drive to beat us? Right. And I think what we figured out is our defensive staff made the right plan, which was stop the run, take away the short pass, and make them consistently beat us on the long one. And I could hear it, even, hey, move the corners up, no. Keep the corners back, make them earn it, and we've got to, part of being patient is you can't stop everything on a defense. You just can't. For sure.
So you go into halftime, you got a 6-0 lead. What was the mood of the team when you got into the locker room?
Stay on track.
Okay.
I think what we felt good about is, hey, special teams tightened up from the week before, defense tightened up from the week before. We weren't putting the ball on the ground or turning the ball over on offense. Exactly where we wanted to be. Again, I still look back and go, that is a 7 to 8 win team every year right now. Waconia is. It's a good football team. Yep. You're not going to reel off 30 in a row a lot of times against a team like that. It happened that we ended up striking hot in the third, and it did stretch out. But that is a good football team. And the theme at halftime was keep doing what we're doing, and things will pop. And they did.
Yep, they absolutely did. And the offense seemed to have a little bit of a little extra spark when you got into the third quarter. Savion on a beautiful 46-yard run. I mean, he continues to impress me. He's incredible.
I've not worked with an athlete, maybe at any level, and there were some good ones at the University of St. Thomas, that is as good at his level relative to his competition as Say, and it's a very high compliment with some of the kids that we had at the Division III level, and it was just, and that includes recruiting a number of kids throughout the year. I mean, he's just really good relative to this level, and as I said last week, we're going to continue to challenge him in being really good and more than just running the football. So
that's awesome. So you go up 12-0. You choose to kick an extra point at this point. Yep. Normally you would go for 2 to try and get back to 14-0. What went into that decision?
So there's a lot of things. You have to always say, well, if that were there were only 2 drives left for the other team's offense, then you go for 2. Okay. Because then if they score twice, boom. When you get to the point where they might have 3 or 4 drives left, and we might have another 2 drives left. To me, at that point, the most important piece is, and our defense is playing well, get another point. Yep. Because then they have to make sure that they're getting their extra points and they're not going for 2. So that is something where earlier in games, you will always see me personally lean towards taking the point if we can get it. Okay. Later in the game, it might be a little bit more urgent and say, well, if they only have 2 drives left, they're going to go for 2 on both of them to try to win the game. So that is just more of a stage of game, not necessarily. You look at these handy little charts and they'll say at 12 points, go for 2. Right. To me, there is some gray area in there based on what is the situation in the game. So that is exactly why we went for the 1 at that point and said, let's be up 13 to nothing instead of 12 to nothing. Got it. Okay. Or possibly 14.
Right. So literally 14 seconds later, after a muffed kickoff by Waconia, Savion goes in again, this time on an 11-yard run, and then a 2-point conversion, also by Savion. Now you're up 21-0. Did that seem to deflate the Wildcats a little bit?
I think it did. Now let's go back a week. Waconia is sitting there right now going, listen, we dropped. We had a guy clearly behind the defense, and he wasn't able to finish in the end zone. Like us the week before. They had a kick that went down the field and then took a random hop the opposite way, and we recovered it. Same thing that happened to us the week before. Right. That's football. Yeah. I mean, that is the game of football. And they are sitting over there going, man, if it wasn't for these 3 or 4 plays, we would have been right in that game. And, at some point you also, though, got to realize, and I said this last week, you have to be able to tip your cap to the other team and go, there's certain pressures that a good team puts on you, and that's why those things happen sometimes. And so, I want to believe that our pressure and the way that we handled the game plan, the way we executed, created some of those miscues on their side of it. Sure. And sometimes it is literally just a bounce of the ball, and it's one of those weeks. And I think when we look at Andover, that's how it went. And I think they're looking back on this game and going, there was a little bit of that too. But not to take away anything, we went in with a plan, and I thought more than anything, our staffs and our kids executed and stayed patient with it.
Right. So it's interesting. I'll just add a little color to this. I was down at that end when the kickoff came there. Yeah. It bounces off the kid's hands, goes on the ground, and he just kind of stands there. And it's interesting to me that it feels like sometimes these kids don't understand that that's a live ball.
Yeah,
right? That's even if he didn't touch it, it's still live, right?
Yeah.
And it's like he didn't have the awareness to jump on it.
Well, part of it is Ari Tobias was about 7 yards away, cruising down the field, and Wags, our outside guy, was right there. And I did a still shot yesterday, and it clearly shows one guy here, the returner who muffed it, a ball in the middle, and our 2 guys coming right at it. And it was as even as it could get at that point. And I remember highlighting this yesterday to me and said, guys, this is life. So many times in your life, you're going to be here, someone's going to be here, and there's going to be something in the middle that you want. Right. And what are you going to do at that point? Not just in football, but in the business deal, or how you're going to treat someone in a relationship. Like, it was just a microcosm of what life was. Is there's something in the middle, you both want it. How are you going to finish? And we finished the other night, and they didn't. We got to be able to do that in week 3, 4, 5.
Yep, absolutely. Interesting way to look at it. So you added 7 points in the late in the third quarter. Ari Tobias with a 73-yard touchdown run, followed by Declan Wilson extra point. Let's talk about Ari for a moment. He may be pound for pound one of the toughest kids on your team. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. And, I'm so thankful for the assistant coaches we have. Coach Lepshy came up to me. This was before last week. And he said, hey, who are the best 4 or 5 guys on our team that are not starting right now, that are not an offense and defensive starter? Yep. And I said, well, I think it's these 3 or 4 guys. He goes, these guys got to be playing on 4 special teams. And we upped Ari's game on the special teams. And there's a couple more of those guys. Sophomore that showed up this week, Christian Circeoglu, was a big part of that. So we identified 4 or 5 guys, said instead of them being on 1 or 2 special teams, they really need to be on 4. And you saw Ari has a tackle to open the game. He was right there at the point of the tackle and the fumble. And we're going to actually include him a lot more in the return game now. We struggled a little bit last week, and we always tell our punt guys, our punt returners, we say, hey, your goal in punt returning is to catch catchable. Yep. And if you can't catch catchable, you got to field fieldable, which means if the ball's in the ground, we still want to try to field it. Right. And I think we're gonna move Ari into that role and just give him something else that we think could really help be in a winning edge for us. But he's tough, he's thoughtful, he's a team player, and I think we'll talk about the MVPs here a little bit. He was a big part of what we considered our offensive MVP group this week. But love him, and he's just such a fun person to be around, and that is infectious.
Right, absolutely. That's pretty cool. So let's talk just a few stats to throw out there. Max Smith had an efficient passing game. Definitely not as many passes as the week before, going 5 of 6 for 78 yards and a touchdown to Chase Young. Savion, again, real strong, 18 carries, 180 yards. As I said before, I'm continuing to be impressed. Just his upper body strength, even this year, is completely different than it was last year. Mm-hmm. So, and he's more than trying to get away, evade the tackle. He's going through it now. So, which is fun to watch. In overall rushing, 311 yards, 6 different ball carriers, and on 35 carries. So again, pretty good stats.
Yeah, I think you're starting to see a blueprint. I don't want to be a team that says we're just going to run until we need to throw. Yep. I think there's games and stretches in games where you have to do that to get back into rhythm. But if we're going to beat the teams that we need to beat as we get into elimination games, not right now, we're going to have to be more balanced offense. We can't be where we were at Andover last week where we're throwing the ball 30 times, but we also can't be throwing the ball 6 or 7 times a game. That not in my belief system. Okay. If we're going to be balanced enough to beat the teams that are as talented to us, if not maybe a little bit more. So am I happy with the yards per carry? Yes. Am I happy with the efficiency of the pass game? Yes. But we are going to have to be much more balanced, in my opinion, over the long haul. And that's going to be part of this growth that happens over the next 6 games to prepare for game 9 and 10. And if you say, yes, say is a beast among beasts right now, but how could we get better? He's going to make 2 guys miss on his own. We need to be so much better in the secondary blocking. Our wide receiver crew, our tight ends, we spent a lot of time yesterday on saying, our initial contact is good, our initial fit is good, but how do we finish? And not just how do we finish, you can't win every block, but if you can lose the block the right way and force them to go opposite of where Savian's going, now we can go to another level. So even amongst a win, and I will always say this, these are my favorite weeks to teach because even amongst wins, we have a positivity to everything, but we still need to highlight areas that we need to get a lot better on. And I'm not just saying kind of wink, wink, we need to get this. We have some major room for improvement moving forward.
A lot of room for growth.
Always.
So that's good. So let's talk about the MVPs of the game. Let's start with offense.
Offense. So unique. We said, hey, we really thought Emilio Gomez played a great game, worthy of it, but in the end we looked at it and we said we have a bunch of guys that aren't necessarily starters for us. And Ari Tobias and Nico Vargas. We have Teddy Knapp coming over from the defense as a backup tight end and helping out when we get into some heavier sets. And when we really looked at the game, it was those personnel groups outside of 21 that were really kind of the stars of the show. There was a consistency among our O-line, which we're always going to need. There was a consistency in our quarterback play, very efficient. But we really thought it was these other personnel groups that really got us over the top in this game and gave them something else. And then when you say, well, Ari rips off the whatever it was, this 70-some yard run, think about getting just mashed by Say throughout the night. And all of a sudden you see this kid dart through and just give you one of these and he's gone. It's like, that is the balance that we need on an offense. And those are the different pieces we need. So really our offensive MVP was our non-starters in personnel groups. And I thought it was a really neat tip of the cap by our offensive staff to go that route.
Nice. Right. All right, let's move over to defense.
Well, we had 2 guys that really stood out, not just from the way you grade out. We grade all of our guys on a percentage. So I'll get a sheet on usually 11 a.m. the next day that will say, this is every starter in a defense. I look at 2 things. How many plays did they play? And what was their percentage? So just on a simple scale, if you do everything right, you get 2 points. If you do one thing right, you'll get 1 point, and if you did more than 2 things wrong, you get 0. So it's just a graded out deal. And the 2 guys that really graded out well were both Louis Peltier and Cade Caruso, kind of floated to the top. But then on defense, we also have production. So you might not have done anything from a alignment standpoint, and you might have took the wrong steps. So you might have graded out as 0, but you forced a fumble on that play. So you have a grade based on the little things that we need to do on a play-to-play basis, but then we also have a production chart. And what happened with both of those guys is Cade graded out very high, and he produced very high. Okay. Louis didn't grade out as high, and it wasn't a bad grade, but his production was really high. So in the end, we went with Cade. Both of those 2 really stood out. And you always got to balance. He's really productive, but on the play-to-play basis, is he doing all the little things? And there's that give and take between those 2 worlds. Yeah. So Cade Caruso ended up being our MVP for defense.
Okay, sounds good. And how about on special teams?
Well, we mentioned it earlier. First big varsity moment, and Christian Circeoglu.
It's a mouthful.
It's tough for me still, and I nailed it last night with the team, and I still got to think about it. Right? But what a moment to be able to come in as a sophomore. And we had the injury last week to Andrew Most, and we're looking around like, okay, so who do we move in a different spot over? In the end, Coach Ager just said, I think we got a guy that can really help us out. And it was a little bit of a sigh from our 10th grade staff. It's like, oh, he's so good at our 10th grade team. He does everything.
Right.
But you instantly saw that he understands football, and his football IQ is high, and he's athletic enough and tough enough to be able to handle the jump. And now it becomes us to say he's going to be one of those 4-tool special teams guys, and we got to get him in the rotation on defense as well. And he'll be the first one to tell you, you know, I would say to him, how'd you play? And there was one rep that he got on defense where we didn't get the fit we wanted of. He knows it. I don't think he's going to make that mistake twice. I think he clearly has thought through that all week. So really excited for his he was able to contribute on a first night for him on a varsity in the varsity scene.
And that's kind of a big deal.
It is.
Those Friday night lights can be intimidating for some kids.
And he responded.
Right. That's awesome. All right. How about the Mr. Hustle?
So I mentioned earlier, I really thought Emilio could have been our offensive MVP, but Emilio Gomez in game this week was all over the place. And he graded, I always say, how did he grade to all our coaches? How did they grade? I can look at grades across the board. This goes back to me in Spanish when I was in 8th grade. I can remember we had 2 girls in our class that always were 90% high, up there. Yep. And I remember one time I went from like a 62% up to an 84. And I went up to, we got this award every week, a Hardee's gift certificate. And I remember I went up to my teacher, again, I didn't win it, which, I only had an 82%. Okay. But I said, hey, Mrs. Steinmetz, I went from a 64 to an 82. Okay. And she goes, you know what, I never thought about it that way. Those girls are always getting 90s. Right. And that's what I look at, when I look at Emilio, is he rose to a new level this week. Right. And you have to recognize that. And on top of it, I think he ended up grading out maybe as our best O-lineman. And what do I want to recognize is improvement. Man, you are taking this thing to a whole new level. And it would have been easy to go, well, give it to Savion, right? He had 180 yards. But that's what we're expecting now from Say. Like, we need to start looking at the guys that are making significant jumps. And Emilio was hustling, man. He had a couple blocks on some really good defensive linemen where he was up underneath them and driving them backwards. And if we can get that weekly from 2 to 3 other guys to take that big jump, that's who we want to honor, and that's who we want to praise and say thank you for your improvement.
Yeah, that's so good. And then your scout player of the week.
Josiah Soliday. And it is not easy to go up against Robbie Woolen. And some of our edge guys, occasionally it's Chase Young almost daily, and then you throw Teddy Knapp over there, and Josiah's on the edge just working and getting up and running, and the great programs across the board, anywhere I've ever been, you need to have kids that take great pride in that role. Sure. And not only is he taking great pride this past week, but he's taking it from week 1 in June. And if you don't have those committed kids, you're not going to get the looks that you're going to get and prepare these guys. So phenomenal hustle. His attitude is one of my favorite kids on the team and who he is. Yeah. And I'm hoping, again, like everything else, not just the way we play, but the way we act becomes infectious, with our group.
Absolutely. Well, in a guy like that, eventually he's going to be on the other side of it as the starter.
There's no question in my mind with the way he prepares.
Preps kids like that to be in that spot. So that's a great thing. So let's switch gears just a bit. Let's talk about some lower level grade games that went on. Let's talk about the middle school. You got 2 middle school teams, as we talked about last week. The white team had a 52-8 win. Who did they play? I can't even remember.
So white, I think, was Concordia Academy.
That's right. Yep.
And that would be Team White. It's coached by Coach Lethert, and they played really well defensively. They're pretty dynamic offensively. I think talking to the coaches, it was a good matchup for us. Yeah. And I guess some guys that stood out. Connor Flanagan on both sides of the ball. He's really a destructive kid on defense. I mean, you feel it when he hits. Yeah. And then we also had Connor Flynn, who serves a little bit as our quarterback as well, and kind of leading the offense. So the 2 players on that team. On the other side of it, our middle school blue got into a game with St. Croix Lutheran. And they were down late in the game. I think it was 21-20 at the time, 50-some seconds left. And Charlie Fenlon drops back. He's just this really you watch him throw, a little left. You just watch him throw. And it's what a quarterback should look like, right? And he dials up a bomb at the end of the game, and he hits Revis Cooney to seal it late in the game on a deep shot. So just so proud in what those coaches are establishing there. And And it's fun, and I like being down there. I like being involved in that. I see this as a long-term deal for me, and I want to build it from 6th grade on up. And we're going to start some different things this week with our varsity guys. One guy is going to go over there and he's going to talk about why he chose the academy and why being here has changed his life. And again, this has got to be a program-wide build. It can't just be a varsity thing here if we're going to do what we want to do throughout the year. So. Yep. Really happy with that middle school group, and they'll both tee it back up this week.
Good. How about the 9th grade team?
9th grade lost 14-6, and one thing I asked Coach Jerkovich is now we have a new schedule not only on varsity, but all of our teams are going to new places and seeing new competition. And I just asked Jamie, they've played 2 really competitive games in back-to-back weeks and lost by a touchdown. And something I want to be able to track is, what are the scores in our lower levels? And I asked our coaches, hey, where are we relative to where our 10th grade is? Where are we now as a 9th grade relative to where we were with our 10th grade last year? And what is the competition? Is it better? Is it worse? Is it about the same? And Jamie just said, hey, Coach Jerkovich said kind of, you know what? Yeah, I think the first 2 teams that we've seen in week 1 and 2 have been a little bit better than what we've seen in the past. And that's a good thing. I want to win games at every level. But that is not the only thing I'm concerned about. Is are we getting kids in the game? Are we having fun practices? And are we retaining? And you're going to hear me say that a lot. Like, are these kids willing to come back in 10th grade? That is what is most important to me going from year to year. But we also want to win games. And I know those kids and those coaches want to win games because they put a lot of time into it.
For sure. How about the 10th grade team?
So 10th grade lost 21-14. It was a really good battle. So as we were going up to the grotto, we always leave Thursday practices of varsity, and we go up to the grotto. It just so happens that our 10th grade team was home. Yep. And so we were walking right by the field and heading up to the grotto, and we were able to finish up and watch the end of the game. And it was 14-7, I think. We were going in with maybe less than a minute to go to try to tie it. We didn't end up tying it. A play later, they hit a big run, in which really at that point, our guys were trying to get the ball out and not tackling, trying to punch it out. Right. Maybe what should have been a 20-yard run turned into an 80-yard run. They score quick, which actually, something we talk to our defense all the time about. At some point in a game, we are better off letting the other team score to get the ball back. There's going to be, we have a call for that. So I don't think that's what they were doing. Bottom line is, didn't go, well, then they score. We ended up scoring again, to our point. Right. And we just never got the chance for the onside because the clock ran out. But we watched a really beautiful screen play thrown to our tailback, Don Baez, and he broke 2 or 3 tackles, cut across the way. And the whole varsity was there to watch it, which was a really cool moment. And that's what we want. We want to involve them in that. But didn't get to win this week, played really competitively. And then we found out that it was actually, we were playing Waconia's JV team.
Oh, so, really? Okay.
Yeah. So,
nice. So not a bad.
It was a good showing. Yeah. I was happy with it.
Good. So, Coach, let's talk about this week. It's big. It's a big week around here. It's rivalry week number 1, and this we've got Cretin-Derham Hall coming up. The game is also at TCO, which adds another layer to the game. And it's this isn't just about our football team winning, but it's about the history of the game, which we've got the Monument Trophy here. It's a big deal for alums and parents and everybody. So let's just talk about kind of what your first time playing Cretin-Derham. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, initially, I go back to one of the first things that happened to me when I got here. Coach Brown handed me a little history of St. Thomas football. And I'm very thankful for his pride in reconstructing history and allowing someone like me to come in and go, this is what not only S3E football is about, but this is what rivalries are about and that have been established. And Coach Scanlon, Coach Brown's friend and competitor for years, I know they have a really unique friendship. Was someone that I had dealt with in recruiting throughout the years. And I think all of us are really happy that this game is back. I think it was there were 20 years where I was recruiting where this game never happened. So just really excited to be back in this. And it does. It reminds me of, University of St. Thomas versus St. John's, and being involved in that was it's just, I look forward to all our games, but man, that's something special for the community. So I'm happy we have it.
Absolutely.
So it's important to me that we obviously prepare in the right way and honor this game for what it is, but also make sure that we don't make it bigger than it is throughout the game week. It's still an opponent. There's still a process to being ready for that opponent.
For sure. And
that's got to be the focus until we get to Friday night, and then let everyone else celebrate all the other stuff, and then let's go out and execute our plan.
Yep. Absolutely. So CDH is 1-1 on the season. They lost last week to Bemidji, 14-7. What can we expect from the Raiders?
Well, Cretin to me is a team that presents as being a spread team and a team that wants to chuck it around. But it's my belief in watching them that they want to run the football. And I don't think just because we might present differently in the way that we align in formation, I don't think we're really that far apart in terms of the way that we want to win a game. It just presents a little bit different. But when you look at their numbers and you go, yeah, they definitely want to be running the ball. There's no doubt about it.
Interesting.
On the defensive side, there's going to be a lot of familiarity because Coach Springer, who I have a ton of respect for, who was here for 4 years and had some really good defenses, is going to be on the other side of the ball this week. And if there's one thing, when I watched the film coming into the interview process, and then once I got the job, is they hustled and they played defense the right way. It's different than what we do now. They're going to be a little bit more pressure based maybe. They're going to come up and press our corners. And that's just a philosophy thing in how that maybe we're a little bit different this year. But great amount of respect for Coach Walch and what he does on offense. Great amount of respect for Coach Springer and what he does and what they're going to present on defense. But also really excited for our staff to be able to try to attack what it is that they deem they do well and come back with our counters. And that's the beauty of football. Yeah. Really excited for it.
Yeah, absolutely. What will you be focusing on this week as we prepare for the Raiders?
Well, we need to be better in the red zone, which if there was one thing we did well the week before, was we were better in small spaces when we didn't have anywhere to push it vertically. We spread the field very well. So we want to be better in the smaller spaces. We got to continue to preach patience and just understand that it's going to be a small game, a medium game, a small game, and then we have the players to be able to hit the big one. And just know that time's going to come. Defensively, if we can tackle and we can fit and we can force, you're going to hear me say force and power, funneling things back into our guys that are hustling, running. Football and special teams and defense isn't much different than that. I learned a long time ago as an offensive coordinator, I could be on fire as an offensive coordinator, and I still might only be winning 55% of the calls. A lot of calls are built and people align for an even break. If you can win 5% of your calls as a coordinator, maybe 8%, you are on fire. It's not like you're out calling someone 80% of the time. That's just not how football works.
Agreed.
But if you can outcall and win 7% of the time, and you maybe have a talent advantage in 2 of the spots while you're making that call, that is the fundamental of calling football is we've got the advantage numbers wise, and oh, by the way, Savion has the ball in his hand. That should lead to something good. So we need to really win that 5 to 8% of the call, and it's going to be tough when you're going against experienced coordinators on other sides of the ball. And we got a bunch of guys on both staffs that know each other really, really well. And we've had these intimate conversations about how do you want to win football? How do you want to win football? And now you're going, wow, I wish I wouldn't have told that guy that thing, at a clinic 5 years ago. So a lot of it now is just, geez, what did I tell Coach Walch 2 summers ago when he was asking for a defensive coach?
Right, exactly. Well, and I think you add in that a lot of these guys are the players are friends and
all know each other.
They either played against each other at lower levels or played on the same team. So it adds that additional element to it.
I grew up in small town Minnesota, and this game is as close to what I would recognize as what I had growing up. I knew everyone we were playing in our conference because not only did we grow up within miles of each other, but every youth sports thing we did for 10 years was together.
Yep.
And this is as relatable to me as anything in a big city. And I love
awesome.
it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. While I, for one, am looking forward to the game, I think it's going to be fun. I wish you the best as you get after it. So, Coach, thanks for taking a little time to talk Cadet football with me. Our Cadets will play the Cretin-Derham Hall Raiders on Friday evening. The game will be held at TCO Stadium, which is at the Minnesota Vikings training facility. Kickoff is scheduled for 7 p.m. You need to purchase tickets online. We'll have the link below for you to be able to do that. This is also a Tackle Cancer game, so you can also make a donation to Tackle Cancer either at the game or prior to the game online. If you are unable to attend but would like to watch, we will be broadcasting at cadetbroadcast.com, and you will also find the link below for that. So we'll be back next week to break down the CDH game and look ahead to Rivalry Week number 2 when we play Maddaus. Thanks for watching, and go Cadets!